26 years, my father said, lifting his wineglass like he was making a toast instead of sharpening a knife. That's how long we gave you, Lauraine. The candle on my birthday cake flickered between us. I hadn't even blown it out yet. My mother slid a thin folder across the white tablecloth. Before you get emotional, everything is already done. I opened it with fingers that did not feel like mine. Bank access removed, emergency contact changed, estate revision finalized, Mercer Holdings beneficiary structure updated. Across from me, Dad smiled. We only raised you because it benefited us, he said. Your mother needed the image, I needed stability for investors, a family photographs well. The waiter stopped beside our table with dessert plates in his hands. Mom leaned closer, voice low but cruelly clear. Now we don't need you. I looked at the untouched cake. My name, Lauraine, was written in blue frosting like this was still a celebration. Dad set down his glass. You're adopted. You have 30 days to clear your things out of the guest house. A woman at the next table looked over. Dad noticed and smiled wider like humiliation was part of the lesson. Don't embarrass yourself by looking for whoever gave you away, Mom added. They didn't want you either. That was when I looked past them. 2 tables behind my father sat 3 people who had not touched their dinner. A silver-haired man, a woman with steady eyes, a man in his 30s with his phone face down beside his plate. I put my fork down carefully. Interesting, I said. I met my biological family 8 months ago. Dad's smile twitched. I nodded behind him. They're sitting 2 tables behind you. For the first time that night, Richard Mercer had no prepared answer. Mom's hand tightened around her wineglass. Lauraine. But Dad was already turning. Slowly. The woman behind him stood, smoothing one hand over the front of her coat. She looked at my father as if she had waited 26 years to say his name in public. Hello, Richard, she said. It's been 26 years. 8 months earlier, I would have apologized for making my father uncomfortable. That was how the Mercers raised me. Not with rules on paper, with pauses, looks, cold dinners, doors closing softly upstairs whenever I asked the wrong question. If I handled client seating charts for Dad's company events, I was our brilliant girl. If I stayed late at Mercer Holdings correcting reports no one paid me to correct, I was part of the future. If I asked why my baby photos started at 6 months old, Mom's face would go flat. Some people invent problems because peace bores them, she once told me. So I learned to earn quiet. Then Elaine fell in the upstairs hallway last winter. It was not serious, but she was embarrassed enough to bark orders from the bedroom while I searched her desk for her insurance card. The top drawers had receipts, old invitations, and prescription papers. The bottom drawer was locked. The key was taped beneath the pencil tray. I should have stopped there. Instead, I opened it. Inside was a yellowing hospital bracelet wrapped around a folded receipt from a private attorney. The bracelet was tiny, infant-sized. The name printed on it was not quite mine. Lauraine Vales. My stomach tightened around that missing U. Beneath it the receipt read, custodial transfer. I took both items to Mom's room. Why does this have my name on it? Elaine's face changed before her voice did. Her hand gripped the blanket. Where did you find that? In your desk. You went through my private things. I was looking for your insurance card. You were snooping, she snapped. You have always needed drama. Even as a child, you could ruin a peaceful room just by wanting attention. That night, Dad found me in the hallway outside the guest house. He did not yell. Richard Mercer rarely needed to. Dead paperwork should stay dead, he said. Do you understand me? I nodded because that was what I had always done. But the next morning, I ordered a DNA test. I expected a closed adoption, maybe a young mother, maybe someone who had made a painful choice and moved on. 3 weeks later, I matched with Adrian Vale. His first message was only one line. I think you're my sister. When we met at a quiet coffee shop, he brought a photograph in a worn envelope. In it, a baby slept in a yellow blanket with a stitched white moon in the corner. I had that same blanket in a storage bin behind my winter coats. Adrian watched me touch the photo with one finger. Our parents never stopped looking, he said, but every letter came back through attorneys, every request disappeared. You think the Mercers did that? He looked down at his coffee. I think there are documents missing. I did not trust him right away. Trust felt dangerous when every answer in my life had come with a punishment attached. But I kept meeting him, then Maren, then Thomas, slowly, carefully, always somewhere quiet. And now, back at my birthday table, I understood why Dad had chosen a public restaurant. He thought I would fold in front of strangers. He thought I was alone. Under the table, I opened my purse, found my phone and pressed record. Richard stood so fast his chair scraped backward across the restaurant floor. For 1 second, everyone froze with him. Then he laughed. It was not a real laugh. It was the polished sound he used at charity dinners when someone challenged a number on a donation card. Well, he said, turning toward the 3 people behind him, this is clearly some kind of misunderstanding. The woman remained standing. Dad looked around at the nearby tables, catching the eyes already fixed on us. I apologize, this is a private family matter. The word family landed hard. A man 2 tables away lowered his fork. The waiter still had not moved. Someone near the bar whispered, didn't he just say she wasn't family? The woman's expression did not change. My name is Maren Vale, she said. I'm Lauraine's biological mother. My fingers tightened around the edge of my napkin. The silver-haired man stood beside her. His face was controlled, but his jaw worked like he was holding back years of words. And I'm Thomas, he said, her father. Adrian stayed seated, his phone face down beside his glass, but I saw the camera lens pointed toward our table. Mom leaned toward Dad. Richard, sit down. He ignored her. No, he said, still smiling too widely. No, this is absurd. These people abandoned you, Lauraine. Whatever story they fed you, they gave you up. They don't get to walk into your life now and pretend they're victims. Maren reached into her handbag. Dad's smile flickered. She unfolded a single letter, the creases soft from being handled too many times. This is one of 14 letters I sent after Lauraine turned 18, Maren said. Everyone went through the attorney listed on the adoption file. Everyone was marked received. None were answered. I looked at Dad. For the first time all night, he would not look back. A couple at the next table lifted a phone. The manager appeared near the host's stand, watching carefully. Dad lowered his voice. Lauraine, get up, we're leaving. No, I said. The word came out small, but it stayed there. Mom's face tightened. You see, this is what we mean. She gets unstable when people encourage her fantasies. Maren's eyes moved to me, not with pity but with patience. Elaine turned to the watching tables. We have protected her from herself for years. She invents rejection stories for attention. Adrian finally moved. He picked up a document from the empty chair beside him, walked to our table, and placed it beside my birthday cake. My sister's original birth certificate, he said. My name was there. So was Maren's. So was Thomas's. I reached for it. Dad's hand shot out first. He grabbed the paper, ripped it once then again, the sound tearing through the restaurant louder than any shout. The restaurant went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that makes every small sound unforgivable. The torn birth certificate sat in Richard's hands, split through my name. Adrian stood slowly. That was a copy. Dad's breathing changed. Adrian looked at the ripped paper, then back at him. The original is already with our attorney. A woman near the bar whispered, "Oh my God." The manager stepped toward us. "Sir, I'm going to need you to lower your voice and step away from the table." Dad turned on him. "Do you know who I am?" The manager did not move. "I know you just destroyed someone else's document in my dining room," he said. Dad's face went red. "I own half this city. I can ruin this restaurant by Monday." 3 phones lifted at once. I saw it then, not just Adrian's, not just mine under the table. Strangers were recording now, catching every word Dad thought power would protect. Mom touched his sleeve. Richard, stop. But stopping meant losing control, and Richard Mercer did not know how to do that in public. He pointed at me. You have no idea what you're doing. For years, that sentence would have worked. It would have made me apologize. It would have made me smooth the napkin, lower my eyes, and ask how to fix what he had broken. Instead, I reached into my purse. Mom's face changed before I even pulled out the envelope. What is that? She asked. The document your lawyer sent me this morning. Dad went still. I placed it beside the torn copy of my birth certificate. A separation acknowledgement from Mercer Holdings. It says I was never an employee, never promised compensation, never entitled to anything connected to the company. Adrian's eyes sharpened. Marin covered her mouth with one hand. Thomas looked at Richard. You tried to make her sign that today. Dad said nothing. The clues lined up in front of me like place cards at a dinner he had arranged himself. The hospital bracelet hidden in Elaine's drawer. The attorney receipt marked custodial transfer. The letters Marin sent and never got answered. Dad warning me not to dig into dead paperwork. The sudden birthday folder cutting me out of every account, every contact, every promise. And now this form, trying to erase years of unpaid work before I knew what I could claim. Marin stepped closer, her voice careful. Lauraine invited us here because she was afraid they were planning something. Dad snapped his head toward her. You don't speak for my daughter. I looked at him. She's not your daughter, remember, I said. You made that very clear before dessert. A low murmur moved through the room. Mom's face had gone pale. Lauraine, don't do this here. That was your choice, I said. You brought the folder, you chose the restaurant, you wanted witnesses when you cut me off. Dad lunged for the envelope. Before his hand reached it, Thomas stepped between us. His voice was low, steady, and sharp enough to stop the whole room again. Touch her again, he said, and this stops being a family matter. Dad froze. I picked up the envelope before he could try again. My hands were shaking, but this time I did not hide them. I looked straight at Richard Mercer. What was in the trust you stole from me? Richard's confidence did not collapse all at once. It cracked in pieces. First, his mouth opened like he was about to laugh again. Then his eyes moved to Elaine. Then to the envelope in my hand. And finally to Marin, who was watching him with a stillness that made the whole restaurant feel smaller. There was no trust, Dad said. But his voice had changed. Marin took one step forward. Yes, there was. Thomas reached into his jacket and removed a folded packet of documents. He did not throw them down. He did not shout. He placed them on the table beside my cake, careful not to touch the torn birth certificate. My parents created it before Lauraine's first birthday, he said. It was meant for her care, her schooling, and her adulthood. Elaine whispered, Thomas. He looked at her for the first time that night. Do not say my name like we shared a misunderstanding. Marin's voice stayed low, but every word carried. I was sick after Lauraine was born. We were scared. Richard's attorney told us temporary guardianship would keep her safe until I recovered. We signed what we were told were emergency care papers. My fingers tightened around the envelope. Marin looked at me and her face softened without breaking. By the time I was strong enough to fight, the arrangement had become a closed adoption. Our calls went through attorneys. Our letters disappeared. Every request was blocked. Dad shook his head. That is not what happened. Then explain the receipt, I said. He stopped. The one Elaine kept in her locked drawer, I continued. Custodial transfer, same attorney, same year. Elaine's tears finally spilled over, but she was looking around the restaurant, not at me. People are recording, she whispered to Richard. Do something. Dad turned toward me. Lauraine, you don't understand how complicated this was. No, I said, I understand it now. I picked up the torn copy of my birth certificate and laid it beside the folder they had brought to cut me out of their lives. You took money meant to raise me, I said. You blocked the people who were looking for me. You let me work at Mercer Holdings for years without paying me properly because you called it family loyalty. And when I got old enough to ask questions, you tried to make me sign away the proof. Dad's jaw tightened. You were given a good life. I looked at the birthday cake between us. You gave me a role, I said, not a life. Mom reached for my hand. I pulled it back. Please, she said, her voice trembling now. Don't destroy this family. I almost laughed, but it came out as a breath. You told me I wasn't family before dessert. Her face crumpled. For once, I did not rush to fix it. The manager asked Richard and Elaine to leave. Richard refused until Thomas quietly said their attorney was already expecting a call, and Adrian lifted his phone just enough for Dad to see the recording still running. That was what moved him. Not shame. Evidence. They left through the front of the restaurant with every table watching. Elaine kept her head down. Richard walked stiffly, like posture could still protect him. It did not. By the next morning, clips from the restaurant had moved through private business chats. By lunch, 2 Mercer Holdings investors paused a pending deal and requested clarification about family labor practices and financial records connected to my role. The restaurant manager gave a statement about Richard threatening the business. My attorney filed requests for the adoption file, the trust documents, the payments tied to my care, and every record Mercer Holdings had ever kept with my name on it. Former employees started contacting me quietly. One message said, I always wondered why you were doing director-level work without a title. Another said, Richard told us you were being compensated through family assets. There were no family assets left for me, that was the point. Within weeks, Richard stepped down from a local charity board he had used for years to polish his image. Elaine was removed from a hospital fundraising committee after Marin's old letters became part of the legal record. People who once smiled at them across banquet tables began asking questions they could not answer with charm. The legal process took longer than the public fallout, but it began with something simple: proof. Proof that letters had been received. Proof that funds existed. Proof that I had worked inside Mercer Holdings while being told gratitude was payment enough. I moved out of the guest house before the 30 days were over. Adrian carried the heaviest boxes even after I told him I could manage them. Thomas brought labeled folders with copies of everything, not to overwhelm me, but so no one could hide my history from me again. Marin came last. She held the yellow baby blanket from the photograph, freshly washed, folded over both hands. I don't want to assume, she said softly. May I hug you? That question nearly broke me more than anything Richard had said. Because she asked. Because she waited. Because nothing about her love demanded that I earn it first. I nodded, and when she hugged me, I did not feel like a replacement or a burden or a useful story in someone else's life. I felt real. Months later, my next birthday was at a small table in Marin and Thomas's kitchen. Adrian burned the first cake and blamed the oven. Thomas gave me a stack of documents in a blue folder and said, "Only open these when you feel ready." Marin lit one candle and stepped back. No speeches meant to wound me. No folder beside my plate waiting to erase me. No one telling me who I was allowed to be. I kept the name Lauraine, not because the Mercers gave it to me, but because I had carried it through everything and survived. Richard and Elaine cut me off to leave me with nothing, but all they really did was put the truth 2 tables away.